Bhadrang karnebhi shrunuyama devaha Bhadram pashyem akshabhiryajatraha Stiraerangae stushtuagam sastanubhihi Vyashema deva hitayadayuhu. May we hear with our ears what is auspicious. May we see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we enjoy with strong limbs and bodies the life allotted to us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. Today we are remembering one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Akhandananda. And that is actually a very personal thing for some of us, because we generally have the idea that these great souls were born at some other time. They lived in a different age, and things are now different, so we're trying to get as much inspiration from their lives as we can, but we don't have really the feeling that they were actually contemporaneous with us. Now, some of us here actually were contemporaneous with some of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples. Swami Akhandananda passed away, I think it was 1935, and some of us have the glorious privilege of having been old enough to have been alive at that time. So this is not really a matter of ancient history. This is not a question of remembering something that happened thousands of years ago and trying to achieve a deeper understanding of those events. Although that itself is glorious, that itself is very inspiring and very fruitful. But some of these great souls are actually contemporaneous with us, or perhaps not with us, at least with our fathers and mothers that time. This is not ancient history. This is the here and now. So this was Swami Akhandananda in 1935. He was living, I think he passed away around 1935. Swami Vedananda, another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, passed away in 1939. And the last known disciple of Sri Ramakrishna to have passed away is a lady whose name was Bhavatarini Ma. She was a little girl, about 8 years old, when Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and others, she was actually part of that family. So she had known Sri Ramakrishna and the Holy Mother since her young childhood days. And in fact, her marriage to Upendra, another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, was arranged by these common families. So And she passed away, as I said, in the early 1970s. And I think most of us were alive then. So even until that time, there were people who had known and experienced and been greatly benefited by the advent of Sri Ramakrishna, the Holy Mother, Swami Vedananda. So some of the teachers in this society were disciples of those great disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. So this is not something that happened 2,000 years ago. This is something that happened actually, possibly within our own lifetimes. So we study the lives of these great souls, certainly for inspiration, because each one of them had a path toward that ultimate realization. And some of those paths might be quite similar to the journeys that we are taking or have to take. But this did not happen in some ancient time. This happened just the other day. So it's all fresh. It's all new. Gospel, the word gospel is good news. This was, so the good news is not that there was a great soul in ancient days and we can benefit from a deep understanding and appreciation of the existence of that person. That is true. But beyond that, this just happened the other day. So when we study the lives of these great disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, we get very close to that inspiration. We get very close to that time. And some of us were alive when they were alive. Or at least our parents were alive when they were alive. That draws them very close to us. So it's not just a matter of history that we are studying them, especially on the anniversary of their birth, which generally, for all the direct disciples, the monastic direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, we have a special little remembrance, not necessarily a large ceremony, but at least some little remembrance we do observe on the days when they had been born. Now, what we're talking about here, the actual disciple we're referring to here is Swami Akhandananda. And he was among the direct disciples, direct monastic disciples. He was the next to last one to be actually the head of our order. Swami Vedananda followed him as the last direct disciples to actually become head of the order. But Swami Akhandananda had a very unusual, you could say, an unusual journey, a spiritual journey. He was imbued with the spirit of Swami Vedananda. Swami Vedananda really changed basically the outlook of monastic life. It had been done before. He was not absolutely the first one, but certainly in recent times, he was one of the prime forces that amplified the teachings of the monastic tradition or the activities of the monastic orders in emphasizing that there should be not only a component, a strong component of spiritual practice, but there should be an equally strong emphasis on spiritual service. That this was the time when such service is especially needed. And in a way, this constitutes one of the special messages that Sri Ramakrishna, and by his teachings and by his inspiration, the direct disciples, brought to the spiritual scene. It's not that it was totally new. It had been the idea of service to living beings as being equivalent to worship of God, as being as spiritually fruitful and as spiritually meaningful as the worship of God, especially when combined with the worship of God. The emphasis that was given by Swami Vedananda to this message was not altogether new. It had been done before, and as part of this Christian spiritual tradition, there has frequently been, that emphasis has frequently been strongly put forward. But to make that as a unique and potent, and to emphasize it especially as a great spiritual help, a great spiritual benefit to those who would practice it, that was not original, not the first one certainly, but it was definitely became one of the great emphases of the Ramakrishna mission. And Swami Akhandananda was one of the first ones to understand this, one of the first ones to grasp this significant emphasis in Sri Ramakrishna's teachings and in the practices of the Ramakrishna mission, Ramakrishna order, as organized by Swami Vedananda. So if one goes back in the biography of Swami Akhandananda, whose remembrance we are emphasizing today, Swami Vivekananda once wrote to his disciples in Chennai. He said, "Look at the handful of young men called into existence by the divine touch of Sri Ramakrishna's feet." By the way, there were young women also called into existence by the touch of Sri Ramakrishna's feet. And eventually they formed the Sarda mission, the women's branch of the Ramakrishna order. And in fact, the last disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, the last person left living on this earth who had personally known Sri Ramakrishna, was a lady. Her name was Bhavatarini Ma, and she was married to a man named Upendra, and her marriage had actually been to Upendra had actually been arranged during Sri Ramakrishna's lifetime. Of course, it was the custom in those days that marriages were arranged between the different families that are going to be so engaged. Anyway, she had known Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother as a girl. As an 8-year-old girl, she had known Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother and was actually related to both of them, which brings up the interesting idea that there was a distant relationship between Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. Anyway, it was a number of cousins away, so it wasn't a very close relationship, but it's an interesting idea anyhow. And of course, in those days, the marriages were arranged by people who knew each other, so it is not totally surprising that this would have happened. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because it makes it clear that really we're very close to all this. In some sense, there's always a feeling, oh, if we had only been alive in those great, wonderful days when those magnificent people were moving around this world. But really, we should not be so sad about it. The fact that we actually came into contact with that tradition itself, no matter how long it took after the actual lives of the people involved, is a great sense of grace and cause for jubilation. But this lady, Bhavatarani Ma, she passed away in the 1970s, I think 1972 or so. So the time of Ramakrishna is really our own time. It's not that we're looking 2,000 years back when things were different and such great things could happen. But such great things can happen at any time, can happen now, can happen in our own lives. That is one of the great things about studying the lives of these people, is because they struggled like we did, and we are doing, in order to understand, in order to live, in order to experience that spiritual dimension of life. And sometimes we feel that in the ancient days it must have been easier. But it is not. It was not easier. The lives of these great souls make it quite clear that it was not easier in those days than it is these days. But the very fact that we are so close to such significant spiritual dynamos is certainly a cause for rejoicing on our part. Some of us were actually alive when some of the direct disciples were still alive. As I was saying, this lady who Sri Ramakrishna, she was a little tiny girl, I think 8 years old. Sri Ramakrishna played with her, and she visited him. I mean, and she just passed away, as I said, in the 1970s. So all of this is very recent, and therefore it should be for us very dynamic, very impressive. We're not just living at the end of times when things may be more difficult, maybe harder to embody, harder to live up to. No, these are the days. That's why we study the lives of these people, because they came in our own times. And and they saw and experienced life in much of the same way as we did. So that brings the lives of these great, outstanding knowers of God very close to us and becomes a great source of inspiration. Now, Swami Akhandananda was one of the first disciples of Sri Ramakrishna to respond to Swami Vivekananda's call for the formation of the Ramakrishna mission, the Ramakrishna order, the spiritual legacy embodied, Sri Ramakrishna's spiritual legacy embodied in that order. And he was the first one to appreciate the fact that Swamiji was urging a new departure. Previously, the idea had been that one undergo spiritual practice in order to realize God, and that anything in this world, any normal activity in this world, is to be somehow fitted into that spiritual practice by actually going beyond the activity itself, that the spiritual practice itself takes emphasis, and the worldly activities act as a distraction and therefore must be encountered with a different attitude, a traditional spiritual emphasis. But one of the things that Swami Vivekananda himself did not know at first is that these spiritual tendencies, these spiritual activities that we undergo for the sake of realizing God, for the sake of achieving spiritual experience, cannot really, especially in this age, be achieved by ignoring the temper of the age, ignoring the surroundings in which we are immersed. And that as part of the practice to understand the spiritual foundation of life, one of the very effective ways is actually to engage in that, to engage the surrounding civilization and to become absorbed in the inspiring that civilization to become more aware of that which is infinite and eternal. Otherwise, the present and the ordinary become the source of everything. And in the present and the ordinary, there is the future is only present, is only like the present and very ordinary. From one life to another is the ancient tradition. Not much progress is generally made. So from time to time, the divine reality that undergirds everything manifests itself for the establishment of dharma, for the establishment of that which is good and beneficial and helpful, and for the destruction of the opposing tendencies. Those ideas have been known since immemorial times, but in each age they have to be re-embodied in a presentation or in a language that is suitable for that age. Swami Vivekananda himself was not fully aware of that tendency in the beginning. And it was when he visited a famous holy place at the very tip of South India called Kanyakumari. It was at that point that Swami Vedananda, knowing that he had a mission, knowing that Sri Ramakrishna expected him to carry a message, expected him to embody a teaching, but not aware of what that message was to be, nor what that teaching was to consist of. It was while he was in South India that this idea became clear to him with a set of experiences. Sri Ramakrishna had written on the wall of his room at Dakshineshwar. He had drawn, I'm not sure, but I think that drawing may still be on the wall of his room. He had made a drawing, and he had written in Bengali. He had shown various figures in that drawing, like stick figures of human beings. And he had written, Naren Shekhar Debe. I'm not sure that's correct Bengali, but anyway, he had written, Naren will teach mankind. Naren will teach. And Naren, Swami Vedananda had said when he saw that on the wall of Sri Ramakrishna's room, he said, no, I will not do that. The idea being, I will not be the teacher of anybody. I will not teach mankind. Sri Ramakrishna looked at him and said, your very bones will make you teach. Anyway, that was as a matter of background. But he had not told Swami Vivekananda anything about how that was to be organized, how that was to be established. And it was on this visit on this pilgrimage through India, that Swamiji became aware of the actual needs of human beings in this age. He saw that there was a tremendous need for spiritual culture, spiritual inspiration, to reaffirm the spiritual basis of life. But how to do that was what he did not really understand, did not realize. So having gone through the whole of India, from Almora in the Himalayas, now he had traveled down to Kanyakumari at the very south. He was wondering, what is it? How is it? He knew he had a sense of mission. He knew Sri Ramakrishna had placed that upon him, but he did not know what it was. At that point, he was sitting in the temple of the Mother Kanyakumari. There's a temple at the very tip of India. And he went to that temple. It's on an island just off the coast, actually a swimmable distance. And he swam out to that island. And I've been to that place, and how he could swim into that turbulent water, nobody really understands, because it's at the very tip of India, where the Bay of Bengal, the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, I don't know, whatever else, they all merge at that point. There's one common area, so that's a tremendously stormy and windy area. Anyway, he managed to swim across and sitting, as he himself said, on the last bit of Indian rock, sitting in meditation, looking at the whole of mentally visualizing before himself the whole of the Indian peninsula, it came to him, what is the message that was being required, that was being given to him by this traveling that he had done, this pilgrimage throughout India? What is it that he had seen? What is it that he had learned? What was it that he was supposed to do? He knew Sri Ramakrishna had laid the very burden of his own message, his own presence on Swami Vedananda, but he had not told him how to embody that. And at that point, he had a vision. He saw Sri Ramakrishna backing off into the ocean, as though the ocean was in back and he was on the shore, and he was backing off into the ocean and begging Swami Vedananda to follow him, motioning to him to follow him. But Swamiji was not at all sure what this meant. What was he supposed to do? Then, at some point, though he had understood, or it had been explained, or somehow it had come to the attention of some of the people he was visiting, that there would be a parliament, a huge parliament of religions, in a far distant place called Chicago, in a far distant continent called America. And the people that he had been traveling among, he had gone from one kingdom to another in the south of India, well, all the way from North India to the south. He had been on a vast pilgrimage. And when people had heard that such a parliament of religion was to be held, some of them understood that the best representative of Hinduism to that parliament was the very Swami who was standing in front of them. So they urged him to go and represent the ideals of Hinduism in that far distant parliament. But for Swami Vivekananda, he was a wandering monk. He did not have anything anywhere. He was totally penniless, just with God in his heart and in his mind. He was traveling in order to try to find out what it is that he was supposed to do, because he knew that Sri Ramakrishna had placed this some responsibility on him. Naren Shikha Deve, Naren will teach mankind, but where will he teach? How will he teach? To whom will he teach? What will he teach? All those things, Sri Ramakrishna, you could say in a playful way, he didn't tell him. He just made him feel that he was indeed to be a teacher of mankind. That was his raison d'être, his reason for being, for living, for doing what he was supposed to do. So it was at Kanyakumari that Swami Vivekananda understood, or began to understand, what it is, what the mission was that Sri Ramakrishna had placed upon him. Because he had a vision of Sri Ramakrishna backing off into the ocean, some ocean somewhere. He had a vision of Sri Ramakrishna backing away into an ocean and waving for him to follow. So he knew there was something that he was supposed to do, but there were no details. But when these people that he knew, or in the various Indian states whom he had met, when they had the idea that they should send Swami Vivekananda to America as a representative of Hinduism, and they approached him with that as an urgent request, Swami Vivekananda began to see the outlines of a possibility. These people had actually collected money for his passage to America, but he told them, no, give that money back. Give it to the poor. Do not keep it, because we may be deluded. It may be you enthusiastic youngsters, they were all young people, you enthusiastic youngsters may have simply, this may be your own idea, there may be no universal imperative behind this. Let us make sure that this is something that is supposed to happen. So they gave the money back, or they gave it to some charitable cause. I don't remember exactly what they did. Anyway, they got rid of the money. Swamiji told them, if it's really the divine will that I go, that money will come back. But then, while he was at Kanyakumari, he sent a letter to the Holy Mother, Sri Sarada Devi. She was in Calcutta at the time. Of course, this was 1892. Sri Ramakrishna had passed away 6 years earlier. So Holy Mother was considered by the direct disciples as, in a sense, the embodiment of what Sri Ramakrishna wanted to leave in this world. She was in Calcutta at the time, and when she got Swamiji's letter asking for her opinion on whether he should go to America, of course, nowadays we don't think anything of it. Going to America means you go to the telephone, call Indian Airlines or whatever, put down a certain amount of money, and off you are to America. 15 hours later, you're landing in San Francisco. That was not the situation in those days. One had to go by ship, and most of the ships, some went to Vancouver. This one that Swamiji actually took did go to Vancouver. Some went to England, but it was a matter of weeks. And it was something that could not be done on the spur of the moment. It's something that had to be planned. And of course, for Holy Mother to think of Swamiji, one of her very favorite sons, spiritually, and the embodiment of of the spiritual search and spiritual realization, to think in her mother's heart, she felt that all the disciples of the Master were her children. To have one of her favorite children go off to a strange place without any definite knowledge of how he would survive there, her mother's heart just revolted against, said, no, 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 how can it be? No, why should he go? No, no. But she didn't write to him yet. That night, she had, you might call it a vision, you call it a dream, whatever you want to call it. The point is, she saw in front of her the bank of the Ganga in Dakshineshwar, at the Dakshineshwar temple, the steps going down into the water, and there were many people that were bathing there. Multitudes of people were bathing there. This was all in her vision. And then suddenly she saw, coming down the steps of the ghat into the river, she saw Sri Ramakrishna running down along the bank and running down the steps of the ghat into the river, and as his body entered the river, the body dissolved in the river. This was in her vision, and she couldn't understand any of it. She didn't understand what is it that is being communicated to her in this way. Then, to her surprise, she saw in that same vision, in that same ghat, Swami Vivekananda come running down the steps of that ghat, entering the water into which Sri Ramakrishna's body had dissolved itself, and taking hands full of that water. And suddenly he was surrounded by a multitude of people bathing in the river. Swami Vivekananda taking hands full of that water and spraying it in all directions on the people all around. This is the water into which Sri Ramakrishna had dissolved. The water itself was the essence, you could say, of Sri Ramakrishna that was being spread on all the people that were bathing there at the ghat. This was her vision now. When she saw this, she understood that Narayan's, Swami Vivekananda's request from South India for her blessings, or at least for her opinion on whether he should go to the West to represent Hinduism or not, she understood the meaning. And she wrote back to Swamiji, "Yes, my son, it is right that you should go. Go ahead." This was totally against her motherly instinct, which told her, no, why should he go? Why should my son go off into these dangerous and unknown places? No, she wrote with her full blessing that he should go. That's one thing. Another thing, which is totally unrelated to this, when Swami Vivekananda was in America, of course, we've read all about the experiences at the Parliament of Religion, and then he went to teaching in different parts of the country. He went over the whole country, the Midwest, the East, the West, everything he covered, and wrote books and did so many things. But at one time, he was at a certain place, and as part of the meal or the welcome, people were served coffee, and he was served a cup of coffee also. And but before he could drink it, he noticed that there was something floating on the coffee. And suddenly Sri Ramakrishna appeared before him, in a vision, of course, and told him, "Don't touch that cup, it is poisoned." Okay, now why am I going through all this? The point is that Swami Vivekananda was the instrument of, you don't have to call it a divine purpose if you don't want, but the instrument of a higher purpose. He didn't come to this country as an ordinary evangelist. He came because he had to come. He came because he was sent here. Everything was arranged that he should be. And not only that, everything was arranged that he should be protected while he was here. And we are the benefits, the ones who have received the benefit of all this. So we should not think, why is it useful to go through this history? We should not think that what we're doing here in a very nice but very, small, limited way in San Francisco, we should not think that this is somehow an accident happening, as other congregations happen in different parts of the world. There is a definite significance to our being here. There's a significance to our listening to these things. There's a significance to the tremendous effort that has been spent all over the world in order to emphasize the spiritual messages of all religions. But the role taken by Swami Vedananda in this, and we're following directly from his original teachings. Swami Vedananda himself taught in San Francisco. He came in February 1900, and he stayed here until, we don't know exactly when he left, but sometime in June probably. He spent over 2 weeks at Samuel Taylor State Park, camping with a group of devotees. And we know the campground, we have pictures of it. It was in the 20th century. Cameras were available, they were used. And so the point is, we are very close to this. These great movements that we see in the course of history. I mean, you talk, for instance, of the things that are described about Buddha and his travels and what he and his congregation did, and Jesus and his disciples. And we think these are the old days, and now we're in new days where things are different, and those inspirations, we don't know if we can get that same level of inspiration that the people had at the time of Buddha, at the time of Jesus. But actually, those are our times right now as well. The last person who actually saw Sri Ramakrishna, not only saw perhaps as a child and not understanding, but saw very well understood who Sri Ramakrishna played with as a little girl. She passed away in 1972. That was just the other day. So these are not ancient days. These are not ancient teachings. They are teachings for today. They're teachings for this area, this civilization. They're teachings for this world. They're not something on a theoretical level that we have to adapt in order to make applicable to our days. No, this is one of the holy times in the history of humanity. And the more we understand this and the more we appreciate it, the significance of that, the more benefited we will be. Thank you.
स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्तां न्यायेन मार्गेण महिं महिषाः गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु काले वर्षतु पर्जन्यः पृथिवी सस्यशालिनी देशोऽयं क्षोभरहितः ब्राह्मणाः सन्तु निर्भयाः ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
There will be no lecture next Sunday because of a special program on Saturday. Worship will be offered to the Divine Mother Durga next Saturday, October 12th at 10 o'clock in the morning. The program will include meditation, chanting, devotional singing, readings on the Divine Mother, flower offerings by devotees, and a prasad luncheon. Child care will be provided. You and your friends are cordially invited to attend all of our services. There will be no lecture next Sunday because of the special program on Saturday. On Sunday evenings, Swami Vedananda holds an online class at 6 p.m. on the foundational texts of Indian philosophy. The Zoom and YouTube links are available on our website's homepage, as well as in the monthly email bulletin. On Wednesday evenings, we have Vespers with meditation at 7:30 p.m. in this auditorium. There will be no Friday evening class on Friday, October the 11th because of the special program on the next day. The class will resume on October 18th. You and your friends are cordially invited to attend all of our services. After the lecture, there will be a question and answer session in Vivekananda Hall, and all are invited. Om Yau Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithivi Shanti Apo Shanti Roshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva shantihi sama shantiredhi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, peace is in heaven, peace is in the sky, on the earth and in the waters. The herbs, the plants, and the trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. Everything in the universe is pervaded by peace. May that infinite, universal peace enter our soul and being. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.